Okay, you guys. I'm gonna try to get through this, and I said let me go ahead and start because I never know, when I'll get around to doing it again. Okay, so we're gonna be going through Daniel, Matthew, and Romans. So have your Bibles kind of ready to flip flop between those three books, and we're gonna be talking about the 70-week prophecy, and we're starting in Daniel at verse 24, chapter 9, verse 24. So we're just doing the last four verses, which is a great wealth of information and it's like really deep. So, hopefully this video won't run too long, but like I said, this is like some real deep information. So, anyway, let's get to it. If you guys haven't read this, please pause and go read it and come back. All right, so let's do it. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish the transgression and to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Okay, this is talking about the end of the end. When Jesus comes at his second coming to set up his kingdom here on earth, it says to finish the transgression, and to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness. Okay, the end of the end, when Jesus comes at his second coming. Okay, verse 25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. Okay, so this is saying that from the commandment to rebuild Jerusalem to the coming of the Messiah, Jesus Christ, is 7 weeks, 62 weeks. Okay, let's just real briefly do the math. This 70-week prophecy is talking about a total of 490 years because a week is the equivalent of 7 years, and we have 70 weeks, so we're doing 7 times 70 comes out to 490 years. So this is saying, from the commandment to rebuild Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. Okay, till coming Jesus. Okay, then verse 26 says, and after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. It's saying right here that, all of this time from the beginning, the whole 70 week prophecy, only 69 weeks have been fulfilled yet. At the end of the 69th week, the Messiah was cut off. So what happened? Something had to happen for time to just stop right there. And so we're going to go look and see what happened over in Romans chapter 11. Okay, so Romans chapter 11 is talking about Israel and the Gentiles. It's talking about the salvation plans for each of these groups of people. And it's saying, if you haven't read Romans chapter 11, pause right now and go read it. And when you come back, here we go, starting again. Okay, Romans chapter 11. Okay. We see that most of Israel is blinded because of their unbelief. I'm reading from my notes. Israel is blinded from their unbelief, and this is in verses 1 through 11. Then we see this causes them to stumble, and through their fall, salvation is come unto the Gentiles. Verse 11. I was just discussing this with someone. God laid Israel aside because of their rejection of Jesus Christ as the Messiah. And then it says, the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world. So because they got cast away for their unbelief in Jesus Christ as the Messiah, therefore the Gentiles, the whole world, the rest of the world can now come in and receive salvation. Okay, so while Israel, the Jews, have been set aside, God brought salvation to the Gentiles, the church. The branches of Israel are broken off, and the branches of the Gentiles are grafted in. That's in verse 17. Verse 20 goes on to say that they're broken off because of unbelief, and that the Gentiles stand by faith. They stand because of faith. Verses 22 to 23 say that God is severe on them which fell. He's talking about Israel, the Jews. But he shows goodness towards us, the Gentiles, if we continue in his goodness, and if they don't continue in their unbelief, they'll be grafted in again because God is able to do so. That's verse 25 says that the blindness in part has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles become in. So God is laying Israel aside. He's putting them to the side because of their unbelief to deal with the salvation of the Gentiles. When that salvation is complete, then comes the salvation of Israel in verse 26. And it says, it talks about Israel being saved and turned away from ungodliness. And then verse 27, God says, "For this is my covenant unto them, when I shall take away their sins." He's talking about when he redeems Israel. Verses 28 through 32 go on to say that Israel they're the enemies of the gospel for our sakes, for the Gentiles' sakes, because them being the enemy of the gospel, not receiving Jesus Christ when he came, allowed their branches to be broken off, for them to be cast off and set aside temporarily, so that the salvation of the Gentiles could happen. And so it's for our sakes, so that we can obtain mercy through their unbelief. That's in verse 30. Then, when we've obtained mercy, they're still in unbelief, through the mercy that we obtain, they'll also obtain mercy, because God won't keep them in unbelief. He's going to have mercy upon everyone. This is just the plan that he worked out for the church, the Gentiles, and for Israel, the Jews. So because they didn't believe, they rejected Jesus Christ when he came, and they crucified him, he said, okay, I'm going to put that on pause right now and work out the salvation of the Gentiles. And so that's what he's doing through this age right now. The 69 weeks stopped when Jesus was crucified, and then Israel was put to the side so that the salvation of the Gentiles, the church, could be worked out. And then it says, after he set them aside, and when he's done with our salvation plan, the Gentiles, he will restore Israel. Once the fullness of the Gentiles comes, the church will be removed in the rapture, and Daniel's 70th week begins. So that's why we see the separation in Daniel chapter 9 at the end. We see the separation of the 69 weeks from that last final week, because Jesus put Israel on hold and said, okay, I'm going to work out the Gentile salvation. When that's done, when that's completed, the rapture, the church, taken out of the world. Then Daniel's 70th week begins. Okay, so back to Daniel chapter 9. Hopefully you guys were able to follow that. If not, rewind. Back to Daniel chapter 9. Okay, so we went all the way up to verse 26. And after 62 weeks shall the Messiah be cut off, but not for himself, and the people of the prince. This is referring to the prince is the Antichrist. Let's be clear on that. We're not talking about the Messiah, the prince that was mentioned earlier in verse 25. We're talking about the prince who will be of this world, the Antichrist. It says the people of the prince, not the Antichrist himself, but his people, which will be, he's going to be coming out of Rome. It says that he'll be coming out of the Roman Empire, and so his people that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. Okay, then it says, and he, talking about the Antichrist, he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. I'm talking about that last week, that 70th week that has not occurred yet. Because we already accounted for the first 69 weeks, right? And then Jesus was crucified. And now we're on to the 70th week. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. Okay, if it has not already become clear to you yet, that 70th week that Daniel is talking about, this last week, is the week of the Great Tribulation. It says he'll confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. Now let's turn over to Matthew chapter 24. Let's see. Okay. Verse 14, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then the end shall come. Okay, verse 15, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Okay, this is talking about exactly what we just read in chapter 9 of Daniel in verse 27. Talking about abominations. It says, he'll confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. We're talking about the abomination of desolation that was just mentioned in Matthew 24. When you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, it's talking about when the Antichrist is going to, in the middle of that week, in the middle of that 7-year period, because that's what a week is, in the middle 3.5 years. Are you following me? It's making sense now. In the middle of that 7 years, at 3.5 years, the Antichrist will break the covenant that he made. The covenant that he made with the people. So there's not going to be any more offerings. There's not going to be any more sacrifices made by them after he breaks the covenant. Now he's going to demand that they start worshiping him. So that's the abomination of desolation that's spoken of by Daniel the prophet in chapter 9 of Daniel, also in Matthew chapter 24. So hopefully all of this has helped you guys to kind of understand not only the 70-week prophecy, but the Great Tribulation, when that should occur, the salvation plan that God has for the Jews and for the Gentiles, and how all of that works out, how it's all interrelated, and yeah. So let me know if you guys have any questions, because I love questions. Questions just get me to dive right back into my Bible. So please feel free to ask any questions, because I love answering them. I truly do. And yeah, hopefully this helps you guys. And yeah, I look forward to talking to you guys again soon. All right, bye.